Brian, are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. Welcome and good evening on behalf of the city. Welcome to our virtual Planning Commission meeting for March 23rd, 2021. For the convenience of those participating in tonight's meeting, I want to remind you all in attendance, both commissioners and the public, to please mute yourself when you are not speaking to prevent distraction and unwanted disruption. Staff will be enforcing this and monitoring those in attendance for questions during public hearings. During the public hearing portion of the meeting, staff will call on those who have requested to speak in the order that they signed up. Following that, anyone else who wishes to speak will be recognized. So, for those wishing to speak tonight, please remember to address all comments and questions to the city chair and keep your comments brief and on point. If you agree with the previous comment, simply indicate your agreement. So to expedite tonight's meeting, I'll ask that those of you who wish to testify or believe that you might be sworn in. So if you can turn on your video and raise your right hand. Do we have anybody speaking tonight? Oh yeah, we do, okay. Do you solemnly swear to tell the whole truth before this commission? If so, please answer, I do. Thank you. Okay, we are ready for roll call.
Let's see. Here we go. Commissioner Dreer. Here. Commissioner Ferguson. She's not here. Commissioner Michelle. Commissioner Michelle. I thought he was here.
He is.
Huh?
He's here. There he is.
I'm here. Sorry, my mic was up.
Commissioner Preston. Here. Commissioner Weir.
Here.
Commissioner Wiley.
Here.
And Chairman McLean.
Here. Perfect. Before we get started, we are going to move case 1 to the second place and case 2 to the first place so that they don't have to sit and listen for a lengthy time if they prefer not to. So the first case we're going to hear is case 21-400-03, short-term rental at 1722 East Morgan Road. John and Cindy Choplin request that the property located at 1722 East Morgan Road be approved for the operation of a short-term rental. So if staff would give their report, please.
Okay. John and Cindy Choplin intend to operate a short-term rental at the property located at 1722 East Morgan Road. The applicant will advertise their property with Airbnb. So beginning with the first slide here, this case, the short-term rental Mom's Place, and the applicant, as you can see there, and the vicinity map showing us a location on the north side of Morgan Road, just a little bit to the east of Lee Summit Road, about a block north of Truman Road. This is the surrounding zoning area. Property zoned R12, two-family residential, although the dominant use adjacent and on this property is single family. And this shows those single family homes lining the north side of the street adjacent to the applicant's property. background, how the owner plans to limit the number of guests for each stay. The applicant's letter indicates that Mom's Place will consist of the main floor, which is 3 bedrooms, and 1.5 baths. Total occupancy will be 6, and the total square footage of 1,232 square feet will be used. While the code allows up to 8 adults and 10 persons, conditions placed on the application will set the maximum limit of 6 adults given the number of bedrooms. How the owner will handle parking if more than 1 vehicle arrives per bedroom. The 2-car garage and driveway can accommodate up to 7 cars. Further street parking is legal, but should not be necessary. As you could see from the earlier photo there, you can see actually off to the left here where that garage is. There's another driveway on the west side. That lower garage and driveway will not be accessible to guests. How the owner plans to address loud, unruly guests or complaints from the neighbors. The applicant states that in the likelihood of loud or unruly guests, we will issue 1 warning. After that, they will be asked to leave. We will have outside cameras to monitor how many people and vehicles will come and go from the rental. Again, 1 warning and out. So if the applicants are unable to resolve the issue with the guests, the applicants can contact the police department as a final option. The site has been inspected and approved by the city's fire department and building inspections division of community development. The applicants state that they will provide the required safety items outlined in section 14-420-5A of the UDO. The applicants indicate trash collection for the property will be provided by Ted's Trash Service. It should be noted, if the property's use as a short-term rental does not work out, the applicants might convert the property to a standard long-term rental as already permitted by code. Again, this is the property looking directly north at it. There we go. This is across the street in southwest, across Morgan. This is across the street in southeast, across Morgan.
Madam Chair, Brian is coming through extremely gargled. I don't know if anyone else can understand, but I have no understanding of what he said for the last 10 to 15 seconds.
Okay, I will speak up again. You want me to go through these photos again? Okay.
It's really like the last couple of sentences.
Okay. So this was looking, I think I skipped this actually, was looking directly west down the street toward Lee Summit Road. And then this is looking southwest of the property across the street. And then southeast of the property across the street. And then northeast of the property adjacent next door. So that concludes my presentation. I'm ready to take any questions you may have.
Commissioners have any questions?
Oh, one more thing. Actually, I forgot to go through the approval conditions. Staff recommends approval with 3 conditions. The short-term rental shall obtain a business license in accordance with City Code and comply with Article 3, Chapter 5 of the City Code. The occupation license number shall be listed on all advertisements and online platforms. And number 2, the business must comply with all safety and other standards established by Section 14.420 of the City Code. And number three, the house will accommodate just 3 adult guests. So,
Okay, do commissioners have any questions of staff before we ask the applicant to come forward?
Brian, just to clarify, I think you said 3 adult guests where the report says 6.
did I say 3? It's 6.
Thank you.
There's 3 bedrooms.
Okay, Brian, will you go ahead and have the applicant come forward? And if you'll state your name and address to begin, that would be great. And then tell us whatever you would like us to know. Oh, can't hear you.
Mr. Choplin, if you have the phone number to call in, that might be helpful to get that taken care of.
Gotta love technology. Works when it works, doesn't when it doesn't. I think audio is the most challenging thing of all. I think half the time it's just giving your computer or iPad permission to use its audio.
Well, Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
we've approved every one of these so far. Unless we need some testimony, I'd say we move on.
We can do that. Is everybody comfortable with that, or do you have questions you wanted to ask the applicant?
Madam Chair, the application appears to be clean. He has a rather succinct presentation in his letter. I don't think there are any encumbrances that are a substantial impediment to further review of the application.
Hello?
There we go.
Okay. My name is John and Cindy Choplin. Our address is 4712 Northeast Gateway Drive, East Summit, Missouri, 64064.
Thank you. Is there anything you would like us to know that about the property or your ambitions?
Not really, just this is my mom's house, and we're wanting to keep it in the family, and this is hopefully a way that we can do that to honor my mom.
Very nice. Do the commissioners have any questions of Mr. Choplin? Is there
Madam Chair, it appears
anyone
that-
else?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
of the applicant, it appears that he will be the property manager and the party that would be called in the event of necessity by guests or by neighbors of guests.
Yes. And I have given neighbors my phone number. They know it.
All right. Is there anyone here who would like to speak for the project? Is there anyone present who would like to speak against the project? Commission members, any further questions before we close the public hearing? Okay, public hearing is closed and I would entertain a motion.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Mr. Commissioner Preston.
in the matter of case number 21-400-03, short-term rental permit at 1722 East Morgan Road, I move for approval of the short-term rental pursuant to compliance with the staff's recommendations of items 1 through 3.
Thank
I
you. Is there-
second.
Commissioner Wiley seconded. The motion, we're ready for a vote.
Commissioner Dreer,
Yes.
Commissioner Michelle,
Yes.
Commissioner Preston,
Yes.
Commissioner Weir,
Yes.
Commissioner Wiley,
Yes.
Yes.
Chairman McLean.
Yes. The,
Is here.
Oh, Ferguson is here?
Yes,
Ooh,
I had been here, but all of a sudden the screen froze with everybody's picture and it wouldn't move.
Okay.
So now it's back on.
brief day.
I got you down.
Okay. Case number 21-400-03, short-term rental for 1722 East Morgan Road has passed. Thank you. Okay. Our next case is UDO amendment number 47, business park zoning districts. Staff, will you give us a report?
Yes, thank you, everybody. Can everybody see my screen with this? Slideshow? Great. So finally, we get to talk about business parks. So what really started this, we had some questions from council members in regards to what is our business park? What does it really mean? What does it kind of show us? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the slideshow here, and it's going to talk about some of the things that we currently have in our business park code, and then the changes that we're proposing. And then at the end of there we're going to have some examples from a neighboring city as to what that actually looks like. And then we have some other examples that we drew up that kind of fits with this code. One of the things to kind of start with that we looked at, so we did look at various cities throughout the region. We looked at Olathe, Overland Park, Lee Summit. They actually do have business park zonings. A lot of the other cities like Blue Springs, Raytown, Grandview, Green Valley, they have some form of it perhaps, like maybe it's a downtown business park overlay, or maybe it's a light industrial that cities have as their zoning. And it's important to know that the business park that we have is actually in our industrial portion of the code. And so it's kind of in between commercial and industrial. And so the next couple of slides are just basically what we currently have in our UDO for what a business park is. Hopefully this will flip. Right. Not flipping. There we go. Yeah, see that? So this is what we have in our code currently for what defines a business park. Doesn't really have a whole lot to it. I'll just kind of read it for those that may not be able to see the screen, but it's attractive and appropriate location for low impact businesses and employment uses in a campus-like setting typical of modern business and industrial parks. But it doesn't really tell you, I mean, what is a modern business park, and doesn't really get into what that means. And so really what a modern business park is, it's kind of a mesh between commercial and industrial. And typically when they talk about that, they're talking about businesses that have maybe some component to sales, service, showroom, but then they also have some light assembly or manufacturing component as a part of their building. And we can kind of talk more about that as we get through the slideshows. But so the next slide basically is going to show us, these are what we currently have in our code that defines what a business park is. And first thing, right now, it's kind of a little bit geared more towards industrial, so it allows freight movement. Currently has like a 50-foot setback from residential districts, 50% building coverage, and this is again kind of plays a little bit more into the industrial, so you can actually see metal paneling perhaps on some of the building. Has 50-foot heights for the building size, currently has 60% warehousing with interior facing dock doors. And we can kind of talk a little bit about that when we go through some of our examples. Currently, it does follow the industrial standard for landscaping and screening. And there is 40% lot coverage must be landscaped. We do have what's called a parking lot perimeter buffer in the current code, and this is basically from the street right away to the beginning of a parking lot, for example. So there's only a 10-foot buffer there. And then currently it does have an industrial standard for the building materials and facade. And again, that kind of plays into that building coverage. And so that's really what we have in currently the code for business park. And if you really start looking at it, it's more geared towards that industrial component. So when we started looking at what is a business park and what should a business park be here in the city of Independence, I think people look at, you think of a business park, you know, obviously there's educational parks, there's medical facilities, there are just business parks, and maybe sometimes there's technology type parks and commercial parks and industrial parks. But when we wanted to look at what the business park means here in Independence, we looked at, again, it's in between that commercial and industrial, and we really wanted to see more green space. We really wanted to be geared more towards that light manufacturing type of business. And so we did beef up the definition a little bit. And I'm not going to read through it verbatim, but basically it does allow, and it talks about light assembly manufacturing with some limited retail use and for a low impact type development with increased amenities. What we did do in this particular code now is that we are proposing to make it a PUD. Now, why did we do that? The couple of reasons. One of the biggest reasons is that you get what you see. And you know, with somebody could come in and propose a business park, for example, and say, well, you know, I want to make a business park for medical facilities or whatever, and it may not turn out that way. If you make it a PUD, there's two things that happen is that, number one, when they submit a plan to us, that is the plan that happens. That's what moves forward. The other part of that too is that it gives this commission as well as the surrounding properties a little bit more say into what this business park should look like. So in other words, you know, you will have more of an input on whether or not this meets or fits with the surrounding properties. And, you know, maybe there's some additional landscaping or buffering that would be in place, or maybe there are some amenities like a trail or something that we feel might be better suited for this particular location. So we actually made it a PUD, and so we feel that that's kind of an important component to this. So the next few slides are going to go through specifically with the things that we've changed. Now, these are part of Article 2, 3, and 5 of the UDO. Primarily, Article 2 talks about definitions, and we'll get into that in one of these slides. And then Article 3 really gets into a lot of the specifications for dimensions, et cetera. And then Article 5 talks about like the screening and parking and things like that. So to get started, so what we're proposing is to remove the freight movement component. And when we talk about freight movement in the code, basically this is that ideal of having large buildings that have really warehousing component where you're going to see dock doors and you're going to see a lot of trailers sticking out. We didn't really feel that we wanted to see that in a business park. We feel that that would be more appropriate in an industrial setting. And so with this proposal, we're taking out allowing that freight movement. And again, we kind of talked about PUD. So this next bullet point was basically talking about we've elevated it to a PUD development plan. The other part too, we had the 50-foot setback with residential districts. We're increasing that to 100 feet. And understand that that could be up against residential agricultural or residential like an R12 or an R30 or a high density type of residential zoning. We did now set and keep some of these numbers in mind as we go through and we look at some of the examples. So what we did was we defined a size, and you'll see how this plays out as we go through and we look at the actual examples. But we basically set the minimum size here as 15 acres. So somebody can propose 100 acres or 50 acres, but if they came in to try to propose a 10 acre or 12 acre, that would not be a business park. That would have to be some other type of zoning. Consequently, we did make the minimum lot size 1 acre. And that's so, for example, if somebody had a separate building, maybe for a power station, like if it was a medical type facility, or maybe it was some type of computer server type building or center, they can actually break that acreage up. And one of the biggest changes that we're adding to this is we're creating a Florida area ratio, or what's called a FAR. And we set it at 0.25. And this is fairly typical of a lot of Florida area ratios in business parks that we've looked at. And basically what that means is, so if you take the area of the building and then you take the area of the lot, this is 0.25, or basically 25% of that lot can be floor area or building size. Now it's important to note with this, as you go up in stories, assuming you're going to take a 2-story building, for example, and use the second story completely as you would the first story, then that would be twice the floor area ratio. So every time you go up a level, in order to maintain that 0.25, you would have to reduce the building by half. And so it's kind of important to realize that as you increase in height, you always have to decrease the size of your building because, again, it's a ratio based on your building floor space to the lot. And again, if you have questions about that, we can kind of talk about that as we get towards the end. One of the other things too is that we're putting in there some specifications for some architectural patterns, facade projections and things of that nature. And we can have some examples as we look at some of the real world examples that we have a little bit later as to what that means. We have eliminated any overnight tractor trailer parking in this proposal. We are leaving it basically the 5 stories, but we've actually added 15 feet of height. Now, the reason we did that was 2 reasons. When you start looking at a lot of modern building architecture, you actually start seeing a lot more taller, maybe first floor, second floor, you're seeing more skylights. If any of these buildings are ever LEED built, which is the energy efficiency, a lot of times for the insulation purposes and that energy efficiency, you're seeing a lot more taller architecture, especially like in entryways, for example. So we felt that when you look at some of the examples in some of these buildings, you're seeing 2-story buildings that are nearly 40 feet tall. And that's just because of the design of the building. And so we felt that it was appropriate, if we're going to leave it 5 stories, to add some of that additional height. We did reduce the allowable warehousing in the building to 50% instead of 60%. And again, we'll have some examples of kind of what that looks like. The other thing too is, so we did have some screening that we are looking at basically improving with this. So the dock doors currently are already part of the code to be interior facing. And again, we have some examples of that. But the screening will really come into play with the PUD component. We do limit the impervious area to 60% and kind of keep that number in mind as we start looking at some of the examples. But we did that intentionally because we wanted to see more green space in this particular zoning. We did increase that parking lot distance from 10 feet to 20 feet, that buffer. And then now what we're doing is we're following the commercial standards for materials and facades instead of the industrial standards. So that would basically mean that the buildings would have coverages on all sides. We do require that any of the operations be fully conducted within the building. And we did include in here some standards for some parking structures. We didn't have that in our code existing. So basically, if they propose a parking structure with any of these buildings, it would have to meet the same height and architectural style of that building. We do have in here, and again, we beefed up a little bit some of the plantings to make sure that it's shielded from any noises. So if there's a lot of air conditioning units, for example, with sometimes when you get computer server type buildings and locations that are data processing, they may have additional air conditioning units. And so we wanted to make sure that we were able to have something in our code that talked about additional plantings to make sure that that gets buffered. And then screening walls will have the same level of architectural design. So if this became a retaining wall, for example, we wanted the retaining wall to have some of the same characteristics of the building, whether it be the color or some type of block structure. Fencing, we've required fencing if necessary for screening to have wrought iron and masonry columns. And we did require with any particular PUD business park submittal that it would have to have a photometric site plan. And really, we did put some specifications in there for how much light can actually go over onto the right of way as well as adjacent properties, which the ideal is that it shouldn't go past the property lines. And so when you get into some of these larger types of campus settings, we think that's important to require that with the submittal. And we do require for any business park PUD with this proposal to have a maintenance and management plan for the irrigation system and required to have an irrigation system. And then the last thing that we've added to this particular code is to make sure that the development gets developed by a single entity. Now they can sell that to additional property owners, and with that we would like covenants with each one of those properties that's sold to make sure that the architectural standards that were originally approved with this business park PUD follow through, even though it may be a different property owner. So going into some of the use changes. So in the code, if you look at Article 2, there are some changes that we made to some of the existing uses, and we felt that that was necessary as a good opportunity to update some of our existing use definitions. What's here on the screen are the use groups that we've added, which were not part of our existing code, and then some of the use groups that we removed from the existing BP zoning that was allowed under the current code. And so one of those use groups is research and development. When we started looking at other cities, we noticed that there were some uses that were missing from our code that we really feel are important in order to really define the business park campus type businesses. And so research and development was one. Data processing and hosting is another one. HVAC and electrical equipment, light assembly, that type of thing was not in our code currently, so we felt it important to add that as well. Conference and retreat centers, health clubs and spas or gyms. And again, that's a little bit different than some of the sporting recreation that we have currently in our code. But then also computer product manufacturing, and then we added the light assembly definition, which is really kind of the heart of the modern day business park. So some of the use groups that we did remove is we talked about this, the freight movement. So we took that use out. We didn't feel that animal shelter and bordering will be an appropriate place for this zoning, as well as car wash cleaning services. So where can these be? Well, obviously they can be anywhere that there's a 15 acres or more. Doesn't have to necessarily be off of Little Blue Parkway or any major thoroughfare. They can be anywhere. And so when we put this together, we have to keep that in mind as to These could be fit into areas where maybe it's backing up against an agricultural residential area or another commercial area. And just so you guys are aware, there are no current applications for anybody wanting to apply for a business park here zoning. And so this doesn't adversely affect anybody currently in the process. So what does that all mean? And so here's where we get into some of the examples. And so the cool thing about these examples is that we actually did get the actual site plans from this particular city. If you're familiar with this is Lee Summit over off of 470. It's the Lakewood Business Center. I think it's also a TIF development. Understand that this whole site is bigger than the 6.2 acres on this particular lot, but this is a lot that was broken up into that. And so if you are familiar with that, this is kind of that Toshiba, Goodman. This is all the HVAC type of businesses, and then the business machine type business here. If you look at the square footage of the building, this is like a 70,000 square foot building. This building currently has a floor to area ratio of 0.26, and the impervious coverage is 75%. Now, if you also look at this too, kind of keep in mind, you can kind of see that C-shape building in the back. And so that kind of becomes important for our code when we talk about those interior facing dock doors. Next example, this is again the same business park. We felt it was important because this is one of our closest competitors, and so a really good close example of a business park here in the area. But this is the one, I believe there's a Orkin in one of these buildings now, but this is at Summit Church location there, and this is just right down the street, kind of from the last one we looked at. But again, this is a 5.3 acre site, 50,000 square foot. This floor to area ratio is 0.22. Impervious coverage 73.5% on this one. It's important to understand too, the floor to area ratio, they don't have to meet 25% or 0.25. It's just up to that. So, and for note, all of these are like 2-story buildings as well. So. And this is our last example here from Lee Summit, but this is what is that, the Sky Zone, and this is actually, I think it's primarily a 1-story building, but it's almost 40 feet tall, and obviously for the purpose that they're using it for, the gymnastics side. But this is 2.59 acres, 27,000 square feet, a FAR 0.25. But a lot of impervious coverage on this. I'm not really sure if it was necessary to have that much impervious cover. But one of the things to note, when you start looking at the difference between a commercial area and an industrial area, it's not uncommon to see 80% impervious in an industrial area. But typically you would see less in a commercial area. And so, we like I said, we decided to go with 60% because we felt we wanted to see more green space, and we wanted to kind of move it more towards the commercial side. So the next couple of slides are our drawings or depictions of a typical, what we might expect to see here at Independence. In this particular example, this is we consider this maybe a business equipment sales or service type of use. It may be kind of hard to see. I don't know if you guys can see that now looking at this thing, but so this building here, it's a 15-acre site. We're just going to assume this is a 15-acre site. This is a 65,000 square foot building, which is fairly common, not atypical of what we would expect to see. And again, understand too that there could be proposals for multiple buildings on a 15-acre, but this is just to kind of keep it simple. And this has a floor to area ratio of 0.1. So again, you don't have to have the 0.25. And in this situation, without any other buildings, it's an impervious coverage of 28%. Now in this building example, if you guys can see that, hopefully you can, but half of the building is warehousing. Let's say, for example, in the back, the front of this would be perhaps offices, showroom, sales and service, that type of thing. And then you have the internally facing dock doors. So that's kind of an example of how that would have to look. You would actually have to physically structure that into your building. And then using this example, using our current parking code, this would actually require 131 parking spaces for this use with this building square footage, including the warehousing square footage. And so that is actually a realistic depiction of 131 parking spaces. So I drew these up, so if you're gonna laugh, that's okay. So we've been asked the question, what is the biggest building you can put on this site or on a 15-acre site, for example? And so this is basically a depiction of what that would look like. So if somebody were to propose a minimum 15 acres business park PUD, this is the largest building they could put, 163,350 square feet. This is a floor area ratio of 0.25, assuming it's a single story building. The impervious coverage is 60%. Using the same usage that we did in our last example, using our code, this would be 490 parking stalls. And so that is an actual representation of 490 parking stalls. It's important to note too, with the last two slides, that any of these new developments, unless there's some common stormwater mitigation or detention track, they would still be required to do stormwater mitigation. And so in some cases, if they, their landscaping may or may not, they may not be able to fit that detention. Let's say it's a wet pond or a dry detention pond, for example. That would still have to be incorporated in this. And so it could have an impact on the impervious coverage, which is the parking lot and the impervious roof, for example. And so that may still have to be in there. And so that's potentially can have an impact on the size of the parking lot and hence the size of the building. Important to note though, with this example, this really could not have any warehousing. And the reason it couldn't have warehousing is because any of the dock doors would be outward facing. So in order to be able to get this size of a building, you would not be able to have any kind of warehousing in there. So with that, that is what I have to present to you guys today in regards to the business park. And with that, I will open it up for questions and dialogue.
Does anybody want to start? Does anybody have any questions?
Madam Chair, I've got a couple questions.
Yes, Commissioner Michelle.
So, there's a fair amount of variety of different uses here, and this really could be developed, again, project by project that we would be looking at, but it could be more like a campus with a variety of pad sites for retail or restaurant, hotel, those sorts of things. Correct. I just want to clarify that.
Yes, it can.
Okay. And then would you imagine there being a, since this is going to be developed by one entity, that there probably would be master stormwater management for the entire development that individual parcels would then utilize? Or are we going to be looking at this from the standpoint of individual developments on various lots that there may not be planning for at the time?
Yeah, so more than likely, what we would expect to see would be a master plan that talked about a stormwater area, a common track for all broken up lots. So if you look at the Leaf Summit, they don't really have any, on all those individual lots, they don't really have any stormwater mitigation because it's handled on another corner of that entire development. And so that's what we would expect to see. Obviously, if somebody chose to do something different, or if they came back with, maybe they came back with 30 acres, for example, and then 15 acres was going to be sold to one entity and they didn't want to have to, account for a stormwater mitigation, or maybe they wanted a pond on that to put a trail around it. So there could be a variety of different proposals. It's important to note too, and you kind of point this out, Commissioner, but yeah, there are a plethora of different things that can happen, and especially with stormwater mitigation. Somebody could propose a green roof, which would actually reduce that impervious count. So, but yeah, I would expect to see more of a regional detention pond for a large development site.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Commissioner
Uh,
Preston.
thank you. I certainly applaud the updates. It certainly delineates distinctions between an industrial park, which this commission was confronted with on a previous project, and what is a business park. But I want to ask you on your last comment concerning warehousing, and when you said no warehousing, you mean no warehousing that is standalone. That is, there's warehousing associated with the potential storefront or the likes, but no warehousing that is a standalone entity. Can you discuss that for me?
Yeah, so in our code, we do distinguish the difference between, and maybe if I spoke incorrectly, but warehousing versus freight movement. So freight movement is that kind of that standalone large buildings with, 20 different dock doors and trailers sticking out. That would be more of a freight movement type of use. So when we're talking about warehousing, we're talking about a warehousing for any particular business that is wanting to assemble their product and have it distributed. So they are allowed that 50% warehousing in that building. Does that clarify that?
That's good. Thank you.
So Richard, we're talking about essentially what's being prohibited is more like what you would consider a logistics facility.
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
and that's kind of where that's that distinguishing between an industrial area and what we want to see more of as a commercial business area. And when we put all this together, it really came down to what do we want to see as a quality development. And we looked at, like I said, various other cities, and we felt that this met that standard.
Yeah, I also want to commend the city on, I think this is really a good body of work. It certainly feels better than the last time we were looking at something similar, and it feels like it gives much more definite guidelines and I think for developer as well. So I appreciate this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any questions or comments? Okay, and I think we need a motion on this, correct?
Yes, and this is actually a public hearing too.
Okay, so is there anyone who would like to speak against this or ordinance change? Get the bad out of the way first, I guess. Is there anybody who would like to speak for this change? Hearing no one. Commissioners, do you have any other comments or questions of the city before we close the public portion of this? Okay, public portion is closed. Are there any more comments or discussion from commissioners?
Madam Chair, it appears to be an excellent update. And if there's no further discussion, I'll move that UDO amendment number 47 per case number 21175-03 business park zoning districts be approved as presented.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I second.
Commissioner Preston gave the motion. Commissioner Michelle seconded. Staff, we're ready for a vote.
All right, Commissioner Dreer,
Capital
Yes.
Improvements Program, or CIP, is a major financial
sorry about that. Commissioner Ferguson,
Yes.
Commissioner Michelle,
Yes.
Commissioner Preston,
Yes.
Commissioner Weir,
Yes.
Commissioner Wiley,
Yes.
and Chairwoman McLean.
Yes. UDO amendment number 47 has passed. Okay, Our next one is the Capital Improvements Program for 21 through 2027, 2021 through 2027. So this is not a public hearing. And so if City will go ahead and give us a report on this.
Yes, so this is our new CIP, and what we have today is kind of cool. So I have to thank Samantha Morris and City Manager's Office. She put together this really cool video so you guys don't have to hear me talk. And this will kind of just go through our CIP, and once we get done with that, you guys can have some questions. I believe we have some people here from Municipal Services that could answer some questions on some of these projects if you have any afterwards. So without further ado, let's start this thing.
The Capital Improvements Program, or CIP, is a major financial, public infrastructure, and equipment planning tool for municipalities. The CIP is a long-range plan that identifies capital projects and equipment, provides a planning schedule, and identifies options to fund the projects and equipment. The development of the CIP provides information regarding planned public improvements and equipment with anticipated funding. The CIP provides a link between the various master plans, the city's comprehensive plan, and the annual budget. The CIP is used to guide the city in preparing the next year fiscal budget. It further implements the visions, goals, and strategies of the Independence for All strategic plan and Imagine Independence 2040 comprehensive plan. The CIP sets forth proposed projects for constructing, maintaining, upgrading, and replacing the city's physical infrastructure and equipment necessary for continued operations and providing city services during the next 6 fiscal years, beginning in June of 2021 through July of 2027. The CIP contains 128 identified projects with a total projected cost of $160.4 million, including 69 active projects that are either in construction or undergoing planning and design. The category with the largest number of active projects in the next 2 years is the Municipal Services Division with 38 projects. For all projects estimated fiscal year 2021 through 2022, expenditures total approximately $31.3 million, and fiscal year 2022 to 2023, expenditures total approximately $30.3 million. Each year through the public safety sales tax, both fire and police purchase a number of new vehicles based on the most immediate needs of each department. For the fire department, the annual pumper replacement and aerial with equipment replacement will be required this year. The police department will maintain their vehicle replacement plan. Once purchased, the vehicles may be shifting through other departments and other assignments as needed. Vehicles are kept within the fleet as long as they are economically feasible to continue maintaining. The purchase of new vehicles and all of the equipment to be installed in each one, as well as any outsourced labor for the changeover of equipment from one vehicle to another with decals, is included in this plan. As a reminder, with some of our upcoming CIP projects, many are funded from different sales sources. Our street sales tax includes 23 projects over the next 6 years. Some highlights for 2022 include the Truman Connected project, which will create a multimodal spine along major streets in Western Independence that will connect transportation users of all types along 7.5 miles of roadway. The second project to highlight is the 24 Highway Complete Streets. This project will improve 24 Highway from River Boulevard to 291 Highway. A continuous center turn lane will be provided to improve safety. There will also be gutter and curbs installed on both sides of the street and include a 10-foot wide shared pedestrian and bicycle path. Our stormwater sales tax includes 22 total projects over the next 6 years with 5 active projects for 2022. A couple highlights for 2022 include Project 1, which is Leslie to Crane and Hereford Phase 1 and 2. This project will provide stormwater facilities in this residential neighborhood of the Cracker Neck Creek watershed where there has been a history of flooding and erosion. The second project to highlight is the Rockwood Storm drainage improvement. Due to undersized culverts, eroded stream banks, and deteriorated storm drainage facilities, it has resulted in the need for over 3,500 feet of improvements in this area. The sanitary sewer sales tax has a total of 26 projects over the next 6 years. One highlighted project for 2022, which is also a multi-year project, is the Upper Adair Interceptor design. This particular project will reroute sanitary sewer flows crossing I-70 in the areas southwest of I-70 and Nolan Road to reduce capacity issues. These lines will be rerouted, which will also prevent future breaks in this area. The Water Fund includes 21 projects over the next 6 years with 15 ongoing projects in 2022. Two of the highlighted projects we have going on in 2022 is the Courtney Bend Plant Emergency Generator. While this is a multi-year project, it will increase the reliability of the city's water source in the event of an electrical power outage should it occur. This generator may also be used to reduce the demand of necessary energy provided to the plant. The second project to highlight is the Wellfield Electrical Improvement. A good portion of the overhead wiring was installed in 1950s that has become less than optimal and repairs are becoming more and more frequent. Some projects include funding from multiple funding sources. For example, a major project beginning in 2022 is the Spring Branch Garage Complex that's planned to start in 22 and be completed in 2024. Being funded 25% from the General Fund, Electric Fund, Water Fund, and the Water Pollution Control Fund. The Spring Branch Garage Complex will consolidate the former garages of Water Pollution Control and Public Works Streets and Fleet Maintenance into a single facility, providing a location for all 4 services for the Municipal Services Department. As a reminder, the CIP is not a static document, but rather a fluid document that can be changed as the infrastructure requirements change, development occurs, and funding opportunities become available. Projects listed in the CIP report are not necessarily listed in priority order and are not to be construed as a promise to any person or group that it will be completed within a specific time frame. Here are just a few of the exciting future projects we have coming. For a more detailed report on our CIP, please visit the city website /comdev/CIP.
Well done. And if the cartoon was supposed to be our city manager, Zach Walker, it's pretty darn good resemblance.
I was going to say, if anybody noticed that looked like Zach in the video.
Right away, she nailed it.
Yeah, that wasn't, that was my design, so.
Oh, nice. You nailed it. Does anybody have any questions or need explanation on anything? Further explanation?
You guys changed the format of our packet. So normally we would get like every project, right? Like we're buying this truck, and so I always kind of look forward to that because I'm super proud of the minutia, right? Like this is always when I wish people that lived in the city would pay attention so that they knew what things cost and knew how much the city had to spend to do the things that you don't want to think about, right? Like we all saw what happened in Texas this winter. And, you know, a lot of the stuff that happens like that is because of stuff like this, because stuff like this isn't being taken care of. And so this is when I always wish people would pay attention. So this is one of my favorite things that we do. I think you guys have done a great job. I love the video. I think it's a great way to explain it.
Thank you.
Yeah, I agree, Heather.
I'm going to echo Commissioner Wiley's comment because I've got friends in Jackson, Mississippi, with friends in Jackson, Mississippi, and the infrastructure has so deteriorated over the years without planned upgrades that there are citizens there now that have been without water, potable water, for as much as 3 weeks or more. So this type of strategic planning and systematic upgrades and across the board sectors of the city, it's just wonderful planning, very thoughtful, make me very proud.
I would say, given given my day job, I have no shortage of looking at capital improvement plans. But being this is my first year on the Planning Commission, this is my first opportunity to sort of see behind the curtain at sort of the inner workings and what it takes to put one of these together. So I'll just echo the comments that I appreciate the level of detail and the hard work.
Yeah, I'm excited, and it just feels like the future feels pretty good. And frankly, I mean, some of these projects, I was kind of surprised they're not more money, given all the uptake in cement and metals. And I know you guys you work very diligently to get the best price that you can, and I respect that. So if we can feel free to discuss it more or ask any more questions, or what we need is a motion in the form that says that we recommend to the city manager to include this in his budget for fiscal year 2021 through 2022.
Madam Chair.
Proximity. Yes, Commissioner Preston.
In the matter of this capital improvement program for fiscal years 21 through 27 is outlined, I move that this be recommended to the city manager for inclusion in the 2022 budget.
Is there a second?
I second.
Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. Okay, ready for a vote?
Commissioner Dreer? Yep, sorry. Commissioner Dreer?
Yes.
Commissioner Ferguson?
Yes.
Commissioner Michelle?
Yes.
Commissioner Preston?
Yes.
Commissioner Weir?
No.
Commissioner Wiley?
Yes.
And Chairwoman McLean?
Yes. Approval of the capital improvement program for fiscal years 2021 to 2027 has been approved. Okay. Minutes, approval of the minutes. I'll give you a few seconds to read it over. It might take more than a few seconds if you haven't already read it, but give me a minute. Does anyone have any changes or additions? Spell checks? All those in favor of the minutes, raise your hand. Thank you. Minutes are approved. Okay, roundtable. Staff, do you have anything for us?
I don't believe so. So unless you guys have any topics, I think that'll be good for us.
Anyone else have anything for the greater good?
When's the next meeting?
Let me double check for you.
First week in April, right? Or
April 6th, does that sound right?
Yeah.
And I
Hold on.
think that one's gonna be a long one, so.
Yeah, we have,
It's the 13th, wasn't it?
sorry, the 13th. I was looking
13th.
it up. 13th. So yeah, there are about 6 cases, I want to say, on that. But the next meeting, we don't have any cases. So Easter famine, I guess.
Drink your coffee or your energy beverage or whatever. It'd be a fun one. I mean, truly, we've had a lot of short ones this year, so, or last year. I feel like 2020 didn't even happen somehow. But it did. All right, that's it for all of us, I think. Thank you, everyone.
Madam Chair, I don't think the city councilor has made a comment, has offered up comment. Therefore, it's probably should open it up for a 45-minute dissertation.
Okay.
Somebody mute Mr. Preston. Is that possible? But did I say that out loud? My
Yeah,
bad.
I've got my coffee, so go ahead.
Or you could play the piano.
I could.
44 minutes of the 45 minutes piano.
Maybe I should just do that at the beginning of every meeting for a few minutes. Set the
I'll
stage.
take him off the hook. He's off the hook.
Unmuted.
Yeah. Sign off music. He's right.
All right. Well,
I'll
if
think
there's
about it.
nothing
Maybe next
else-
time.
Get something ready for next time.
Piano's right over there, so anytime.
Yeah, Mitch, don't you have time to compose something specially for us?
Not composing anything. Unless you want to add another job to my list of growing job titles.
Yep, that was the point.
Thanks.
Highest and best use.
All right then.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Everybody have a good evening.
Bye.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you.